One of the things that some websites have are timers or digital clocks on their websites. And you may or may not want to put a digital clock on your website. In Flash, remember, because everything's vector art and so small, we can put a ton of stuff up there and not have to worry about file size. But just because we can put a ton of stuff up there doesn't necessarily mean we should. So I want you to think about that. Okay, so since some people might want a clock or a countdown ticker or things like that, what I'm going to show you how to do is a clock first. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab our text layer, and we're going to just put some text here, and I'm going to type in 12. Oops, let's do that again, 12 a.m. And I probably don't want it to be this text, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick, let's say, what do I have, Courier in here somewhere? Okay, I'm just going to move this over, and it can be any color you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be this big. The other thing that I should have said here is it needs to be dynamic. Okay, we need this to be dynamic text because we're going to watch this count down or become a clock, and we're going to program it to be a clock. I also want to give it an instance name of time underscore txt. Oops. Because we're going to be calling on that to move when we need it to move. And the other thing that we need to do is, because not every website or I'm sorry, every computer that uses this website may have the same font that we have, what we're going to do is we're going to embed the numbers, because we're only going to really need the numbers and then the AM and PM. Oops, let's go back in here and put a little period there. We want them to be able to go in and be able to use this, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we embed this font. So we're going to go ahead and embed it. We do that by clicking Embed over here down in the lower right hand corner, and we click Numbers, and then we can add some things, and we want to add the semicolon, the A, the M, and the P. Okay, and let's see, a period just in case. We hit OK, and it will automatically embed all of the numbers, the period, the AM, and the PM. Now we could take out the period if we wanted to, but we don't necessarily have to. So I want you to set this up like this. Okay, so what we need to do now is let's go ahead and name this clock or digital. We can name it anything we want. And then, as I always do, you know, I always put an actions layer on top. So let's go ahead and put actions. Let's lock this layer. As I'm looking at this, I might want to come in here and change this. I don't know. You know, I'm debating on whether I want this to be capital A and M, which probably would maybe work a little better. So we go back to our embeds, and then let's just put capital A, M, and P here. Hit OK, because then we can get away with having this a little bit smaller than that with the periods. So then we go to our, let's go ahead and relock this and then go to our actions layer. Okay, so let's go ahead and start programming our script. I'm going to hit the first frame here. I'm going to lock down my actions layer because I don't want any problems there. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to start to define my clock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called myDate, okay, and then we're going to put a colon, and then we're going to call the date function equals to new and then date, because we want it to be a new date. And then we're going to call the function and then terminate this. So what we're doing is we're telling Flash that we've got this my variable is called date, and then it's equal to new date. Okay, so what we do now is we're going to create another variable called my hours, and it's going to call the myDate function, and we have date equals new date. So the myDate variable is equal to the date equals new date, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say that myHours equals myDate, and then we're going to tell it to do something, get. And as you can see, I have get hours. I wanted to get the hours, so we're going to set up hours, minutes, and seconds, and we're going to do this. And if we double click on hours, you'll notice that get here. So I set myDate dot, and then I get the pop-up that gives me the functions that we're going to get. So I'm going to double click on hours, and it puts in the whole thing for me. And I'm just going to go ahead and terminate that line. And I'm going to do the same thing for seconds, and I'm going to do the same thing for minutes. So I'm going to go in and type establish my minutes, and we can call it mins, we can call it minutes, we can call it whatever we want, but I'll just say min, and then we're going to say my date again, dot, and then this time we're going to get minutes. Okay, terminate that, and we're going to do the same thing with seconds. So we'll say my sec for seconds equals my, make sure that's capital, date, dot, and then we're going to get seconds. We're going to terminate that and do the same thing. And now okay, so now we're going to go in here and we're going to set this up. We're going to set up our variables, because we've got to be able to distinguish between hours, minutes, and seconds. So now what we're going to do is the computer's going to look at it in terms of military time, and we don't want it to do that. We want to look at our hours in regular time, and we want it to look at them in terms of AM and PM. When it looks at the hours, it looks at it between 0 to 23. So what we wanted to do is we're going to set up our AM and PM variables right now, so that we have our AM and PM popping up at the right times first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type variable AM PM and terminate that variable. So I'm establishing the variable AM PM. And now I'm going to have an if-else statement. If my hours, okay, and then we set up the condition. If my hours are less than 12, close that, open our curly brackets, and then here's the function. Now we're going to say do something. If it's less than 12, then it's AM PM equals, and then we're going to say AM, because that's what we embedded into our program, and then we've terminated that. Okay, so we've closed our function, we've set it all up. Now we're going to say else, open a curly bracket, AM PM is equal to PM. Okay, remember that too is our curly bracket right there. So we're going to terminate that, and then we're going to close our curly bracket. So what we're saying is our variable AM and PM, if my hours is less than 12, then it's AM. Otherwise, AM PM equals PM. Okay, so now we're going to set up our two significant digits. So if we have a 9, we want a 0 to be there. We just don't want it to be up there with a 9 all by itself. So now what we're going to say is if my hours, and then we're going to set up the condition. If my hours is less than 10, and now we're going to say we want you to do something. If my hours are less than 10, my hours equals 0, okay, don't put O by the way, 0 plus my hours. And what we're saying is we want not only the time, if it's a 9, let's say if it's a 9, we want it to be a 0 in front of that. So if it's less than 10, my hours equals 0 plus the hour, basically is what we're saying. So if it's less than 10, 1 through 9, we're going to add a 0 in front of it. because that will give us 09, 08, 8 o'clock, so that we can see that. Now we want to go in and do the same exact thing for this minutes and seconds. Okay, and since we've already set this up and we know it's right, now all I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste this. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it twice, because we're going to use the exact same thing for our seconds, our minutes, and our seconds. So I want you to remember that my minutes we shorten to my min. So we have, here's my hours. If my hours, we want this to be my min. Okay, and then make sure that it's my min here as well. Okay, so we want to make sure that if my min, okay, and plus my min. Because we did that, we want to make sure that that translates to, oops, this is sec. We want to make sure that this variable is correct, because we made those changes. So let's go back up. We've got our hours are going to go into get hours, into my hours. Our minutes are going to be in my min, and then get seconds are going to be in the seconds. So we've set all that up. We've set our variable to show the difference between the AM and the PM, and then we've set up putting a 0 in front of our single digit so that we have the 2 digits that we need. Okay, so here's my hours, my min, and my seconds, and that looks good. Okay, so now we need to tell it to set the time, do the time. Now, as you remember, we set our time box, so now we need the box to work. So we need this little box right here to work. And remember that we gave this box, we locked it, by the way, whoops. We gave this box the instance name time text. So now we're going to work with that. Now we need to go back in and work with that action. So we're going to go back to our actions, and we're going to come in here. We're going to go down, and I'm going to declare my time instance now, and I'm going to say time text dot, and we're going to go down to text. Oh, da 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 da. Or I can just, guess what, type text and it'll bring it in. So I'm going to double click text equals, and now all of that stuff that we were doing before, now we have to get it to do something. So now I'm going to say equals, oops, equals my hours. Okay, make sure it's capitalized. Whoops, I forgot the Y. We've got to be real careful about that because we don't want it to be wrong. You know, we'll get an error there. And after we've typed that, we say my hours, quote, semicolon, quote, plus, oops, plus my min. We've got to do the same thing, quote, colon, close your quote, plus, because we're asking it to bring up my hours, my minutes, now my sec. And in my seconds, what we want is a space because we don't have anything following that. So what we have is my hours in this space, then we have a semicolon, my minutes in this space, followed by the semicolon, and then my seconds followed by a space. Okay, make sure you've got a space in there, plus now we're calling for the AM and the PM. So now we're going to call for the variable AM PM. We're going to terminate it, and now what we have is our time. So if we went to go look at this and see how it looks, it gives us, oops, and I have an error, so now I got to go back and look to see where my error is. And this is good because we really need to be looking to see where our error is. So let's close that. Let's close this, and let's go back and look to see where our error is. So as I look at my text, I see that I've made a mistake here, and what I forgot to do was add my mins. So I have to have my hours plus a colon plus let's see, my min, my sec, my AM, PM. Is that correct? Let me think about this. I always like to make these little mistakes because oftentimes they're the same mistakes that you're going to make. So I think it was the little plus here. So let's go ahead and hit Control Enter and see what happens. And I'm still getting an error, so now I need to go back and backtrack and see what's wrong. Now we've got to make sure our spelling's correct. We need to go in and make sure that all of our variables are correct. So go through and watch your variables. Okay, so I need to keep looking at my code, and what I'm noticing is I have plus my hours plus my semicolon plus my minutes, and what I forgot to do is put a plus here, my seconds, and then plus a space. And so these are kind of those little code errors that can really screw you up. So I have my hours plus the semicolon plus my minutes plus semicolon plus my seconds plus an empty space plus AM and PM. So let's hope that works. And boom, there it is. There's our time. We have one problem though, and what we don't have here is this isn't moving. We don't have this moving at all. So we've got to figure out why this isn't moving for us. And the reason is we've got to give it some code, because right now it's just telling us to take the time at this instant. We need to tell it now we want it to continue. We want it to continue taking the time. And that's what our next set of code is going to be. So hit Enter here. Okay, so now to get this to work continuously, so now we needed to set up the movie, and the reason it's not doing it is because we don't have it as an on-frame event. What this does is we need to put all this code into an on-frame event so that as soon as it enters the frame it starts to work. Otherwise, right now what we're doing is we're getting an exact time, and that's all. We're just getting a time when all of this should be working, and it's not setting that up. So what we're going to do is we're going to put underscore root dot, and then we're going to say on frame enter. So as soon as we hit on enter frame, we're going to say equals, okay, function. And guess what the function is? Yeah, it's all this text that we just typed, all this action scripting that we just typed. And we're going to open the curly bracket, and we're going to say at the root level on enter frame. As soon as the frame opens, we want this function. We're establishing this function, and here it is. This is our function right here. This is what we want it to do. And then we're going to go all the way down here, and we're going to close this curly bracket. So let's do this. Whoops. Close that. And so if we hit Control Enter, guess what? It's all working. Now we've got a problem. I noticed I don't have my AM and my PM set up here. And the only thing that I can think is that probably what happened is somewhere my embedded fonts either didn't work, or my AM PM variable didn't happen. So this is one of those things where I want you to try and go in and fix it and see what happened. Okay? We're not done though, so don't get too excited because we're not done. So go ahead and close this, and we're going to go back to our actions again. Okay, so you noticed that our time was still in military time. So again, let me go back. Our time was still military time. We can't have that. It can't be military time. So now we need to go in and make a change. And what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 12 from the 24-hour clock. So if you were in the military, you know that when you have to get to regular time, you subtract 12. Well, we're going to do the same thing here. We're actually going to come in here and set up our minutes, or our hours to normal time by subtracting 12. So we're going to update our hours right here, where just before, under the variable AM PM, we're going to go right in here before we start calculating our hours. We're actually going to set it up to work in normal time, not military time. So we're going to type in if, and then we're going to say my hours is greater than 12, okay, oops, let's just put a little space there, 12, close this parenthesis, this is the condition. Now we're going to tell it what to do if it's in those conditions. My hours, okay, equals my hours, what? Well, minus 12. Terminate the line, and then close that, terminate the equation completely, and let's see. Well, it's still not working, so now we've got to go back and look to see what we did wrong. My hours, oh, it has to be equals, not dash. So let's try again. And there we go. So instead of 1600 hours, now we have 4 o'clock, 4:12 and 26 seconds. So it's updating quite nicely. We need to figure out, though, what's going on with our AM and PM here. So we got to go back and look at that. So now we've got to go back and start to look through our font and figure out, or our programming, and figure out where we made a mistake, because everything else, as we see, works good. We're just missing our little AM PM here. So now we've got to go back and troubleshoot. So now it's time to start looking at our frames, frame by frame. So we know this is all good because this has nothing to do with our variable AM PM. So what we need to do is look at the variable and the if-else statement. So we've got variable AM PM. If my hours are less than 12, AM PM equals AM. Now that works. This is what's going to be shown, AM. Else, if AM PM equals PM, well, I'll be darned. Here we go. This is our problem. We have a capital M. And because we have a capital M and it affects the PM, right now we're in PM hours, it's not going to show up. If we were in AM hours, if this was, say, between the hours of 12 midnight and 12 noon, the AM would show up. But because I have a spelling error here, my afternoon hours, my afternoon PM is not going to show up. Son of a gun. Well, that was an easy catch. So let's see if that is what worked. Well, and there you go. See, spelling counts for everything, unfortunately. So that looks really good. So now when we look at all this, we've set up our script. It's loading and running at the on enter frame so that it's constantly updating itself with every second. And then it obviously seconds turn to minutes, which turn to hours, so it's going to constantly be updating itself with our root variable. Okay, the one last thing we need to do with this is now we need to make sure that when the clock hits midnight, when it hits 12, it doesn't come up 0000, because right now the way we have it set is that you'll notice my hours, anything under 12 goes to AM, and then anything over 12 goes to PM, and then we've got everything checking out, but what we don't have is a way for our 12 o'clock to become 12. We have it, it'll go to 00, and that's what we don't want that. So we don't want it 00 and then it comes up the next to be PM. We really want it to be 12 AM. The other thing that we need to do is make sure that it does it after this AM and PM validator. Okay, this is kind of a checker that makes sure that this is in, AM and PM is the difference between 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. So we have to do that, though, after it validates whether it's an AM hour or a PM hour. Otherwise, we're going to get all screwed up. So now what we need to do is set up a variable or set up our if statement so that it checks and says if it's checking a value, it's going to check whether it's 0, and if it's 0, we're going to tell it to make it 12. Okay, so what we're going to say is if my hours, now remember spelling because we just caught that big spelling error in AM PM, if my hours is equal, and this is a checker, this is a validator, to 0. This 0 is different, this equal is different to this equal. My hours equals my hours minus 12. This equals this. This is a validator. This one says if my hours, and I'm validating that it's 0, okay, and now I'm going to tell it to do something if that validation is true. I want my hours to equal 12. Okay, so now we have a validation happening here. Don't be confused by this and the equal sign. If we wanted to say equals EQ, we could do that, but we have a checker and a validator right here that says if my hours check and validate to 0, then I want you to change my hours to 12. And then we need to terminate this or close this function. And if we hit enter, it's not going to show up. Oops, it's saying, oh, guess what? I made a mistake here. Uh-oh, I need to come in here and fix this because now I've made a big mistake. And according to my little prompt there, if I was to check this, it would say, oh, guess what? You missed the line. It expected this in my if my hours equals. It can't run. So I need to go in, and of course, I should have realized if I didn't get this condition, this operator right here, I was going to be in trouble. But I didn't pay attention because I was too busy talking. And so now if I run this, guess what? It all works. Now, we could sit here and wait till midnight to run this, but we're not going to. You're just going to have to take my word that this works. Notice also that this is that nice big fat red font that I used, okay, when I set up my action scripting here. I mean my text box. This will be anything you want it to be. Just remember you need to embed your numbers and then the characters, okay? If you don't do that, you're going to run into some big time trouble. So we want to make sure. And the reason you didn't see this, by the way, embedded, is because we didn't have the text box selected, the dynamic text. So make sure these are all there. Make sure that your text, your action scripting is correct. Walk through it, look at it. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is a fun exercise, and remember, if you're going to put something like this and use it in Dreamweaver, you'd want to make this really small, because right now this property window is 550 by 400, I think. So you don't need it that big. You'd want it something really small and inconspicuous. Don't forget, I can change the background here if I wanted to. If we change this background to black, you better make sure that this box also, the background for the box gets changed as well. So remember that whenever you're playing with these kinds of things right here, you want to make sure that these background boxes get changed as well. Okay. So if you have any questions, give me a buzz, come by and see me, or email me. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on setting up a digital clock. If you have any issues, go back, rework the tutorial, follow. I've made some mistakes in there, and I'm glad I did, because then that gives us the opportunity to see where those common mistakes always pop up. Hope you've enjoyed the tutorial.